So there were definitely comments there that were recorded in our reported as part of the tolling study that we did, where folks said there were a number of questions about equity in tolling, with respect to location, with respect to age, with respect to income. There are all sorts of things that people put forward, and I know at the manufactured home presentation, I think Ed had a fabulous idea about just tolling at certain locations so that you could avoid that, so that Hayden Island residents would not have to take a toll at all. So then the challenge is really that the project does not set rates, toll rates, and we also don't set toll policy. Those things are set by the Oregon and Washington transportation commissions or the legislatures, depending on sort of the system. So they asked us to gather information about what people think. So there's a section in the tolling report that discusses tolling and equity and raises sort of locational issues and other items, so that those folks are aware of it. But ultimately, the project doesn't get to make those decisions. So that's something that the transportation commissions have the jurisdiction to make. And it's anticipated. This is a very early study. It's also anticipated Washington, when they've done their tolling studies, has conducted additional public outreach, and has done sort of, when they're actually setting the toll rates, they have public outreach associated with that. So I would anticipate this as, sort of the first of multiple discussions about tolling, how it functions, and what the rates are that happens here. So the only thing I can tell you is we can transmit that message on, but we don't ultimately get to make that decision.
Okay, well that's clear.
Yeah.
So would residents that live on the island get a pass?
Wouldn't
that be nice?
Well, yeah, why should we be charged? We're stuck here.
That has
You can't get off the island
Well,
without
you wouldn't be able to
I-5.
get off south without paying a toll. But to use the bridge, which is a big, expensive piece of the project.
Well, you can have it at a certain time of the day, say if you get up and have the people that work do all the tolling, pay our bill, and then have a spot of a certain time even, say noon. Who's supposed to be out at noon? I don't know, I've seen it busy, no matter what time it is. But.
And what is the tolling paying for? I mean, $4 billion to build the bridge. I mean, how much? That's a lot of money.
Right, and that's a really good point. So right now, assuming the refinements package, we're at a $2.6 to $3.6 billion project. That 2.6 to 3.6 is not just for the bridge over the river, and that's one of the most important things for folks to know. We are talking about 5 miles of improvements, so that pays for the light rail extension across the river. We have a federal request for that money in for $750 million. We're looking to do it for about that cost, but that's a good chunk of that 2.6 to 3.6 billion. There are the 6 interchanges that we're making improvements to. With those 6 interchange improvements, the additional lanes between those to create more safety for travelers. Part of that is actually we have to do a number of new bridges that are not just the Columbia River Bridge. So we have to build. There's I think it's like 40 to 60 new bridges that have to be built beyond the Columbia River Bridge itself, or the 2 Columbia River bridges. So there's a number of other structures that have to be built. There are also a number of walls that have to be built, and there's a couple tunnels. So there's a number of other things that really create that cost. So we're anticipating that there's sort of this transit component that's about 1/3 of the project cost, the bridge itself, which is about 1/3 of the project cost, and then the interchange and other improvements, which is about 1/3 of the project cost. So yeah, it is, as a whole package, it seems really expensive for a bridge, but the point being it's really not, it's not just paying for bridge, it's paying for all these improvements that are really associated with improving safety in the corridor. And you have been waiting to ask a question.
And including the pedestrian and bike enhancements.
Yes, yeah.
I got a question. Where I work in Vancouver, 3 to 4 times a week taking care of foster children. Is there any way that you can have tokens or have a pass or anything that you could buy at the beginning of the month? Because there's a lot of us that are on Social Security, we're on short incomes, and we have to level out our money terms to be able to pay for stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, so one item, the electronic toll process, essentially there's like an account that you would have money in, and as you go through it debits from that account. So depending on...
Yeah, but what happens if you don't have a bank account?
Well,
right, yeah, there's a number of ways to it's actually an item that will be discussed and has been addressed in other places. So there are ways to set it up without a bank account or without a credit card. You can have a regular account. without those items. In other places, there have been assistance programs for getting the initial transponder. We don't know exactly what those items are going to be here yet because we don't set the toll rates or the toll policies. But that in Washington State, when they did the Tacoma Narrows Bridge project, one of those bridges right now is tolled. They were tolling to pay for the project. There was an assistance program for folks to get the transponders, and there is a current system right now for folks without bank accounts or credit cards to be able to acquire those passes and have accounts.
That would be great.
I just want to bring up too that, remember that you don't have to pay the toll. You can always take light rail to Vancouver, and there's no tolls on light rail.
Right.
And if transit passes are frequently subsidized by employers, or you may qualify for our Honored Citizens Pass, which is about right now $28 a month.
We're going to have a state-of-the-art transit
Did you
center right
say,
here
did you
in
say
the
if
parking
you're,
lot of the.
did you say if you're going into
So
Oregon, you
transportation
don't
to
pay
Vancouver,
toll?
that's gonna be very
But
good.
coming
Well, I
this
got
way
people
you
that
do?
come back
No, it's
forward.
only with crossing the
So we
Columbia
have
River.
paid.
So if you cross the Columbia, that's where the toll is anticipated. So
There's
not the North
there's a
Portland Harbor.
bridge up in Kingston that you go across one way and you know it's a toll bridge,
Right.
but on the way back you don't, and you get a letter in the mail and you have a $64 fine because it's not marked right.
Huh. Well, we'll be looking to have a lot of signs up. It's the goal to make sure that the signs are clear.
Well, it isn't.
Yes.
Is there a projected year when this bridge will be finished and we'll start having to pay this toll? What year will that be?
So there's the earliest that construction could finish is like 2018, 2019.
I won't be around, but
We're hoping everybody's around. So, and there was another question that was in the tolling study that we were asked to conduct, which was whether or not we ought to start tolling early to have sort of an account set up and have some money already in the bank so that our bond rating, so our overall interest that we would have to pay back could be a little bit lower. So that was an open question. The basic assumption is that we don't start tolling until the project is complete. But there was a request to look at what about pre-construction tolling is what it's called. So starting that early. So it's something that there may be discussions about with both the Oregon and Washington legislature about whether or not they think that that's appropriate, and the Transportation Commission.
We can take a vote on that now.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, ma'am.
even at the lowest of your projected rate, at the lowest time usage, it could increase our cost, or have our cost to get off the island and back on, be between $150 and $200 a month.
Yeah, it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
And the challenge is really that there's
No, that's a challenge within itself for a lot of
$3 a day,
Yeah,
times 30 days.
yeah.
They've been paid us.
No, that's just not.
And, Tom had a question, and then Carol had a question.
Yeah, sure.
I was didn't hear exactly. You mentioned 60 other bridges?
I'd have to check the number, but there's there's a significant number of other bridges to build. So
Where?
So for example, a number of bridges associated with just the Marine Drive interchange, the additional ramps over the North Portland Harbor. So even if we save the North Portland Harbor Bridge that's there, we have to build the connector bridges to and from the island on the south side. So those are the connections to Marine Drive. The Marine Drive, the main bridge that makes up the Marine Drive interchange, the sort of bridge that's over the highway from Marine Drive, that would have to be reconstructed. There's a whole bunch of them all over the place. Yeah,
You're not talking
it's
about
surprising.
bridges over water, but over
No,
passes.
it's a lot of them associated with interchanges.